A while back, I did a video talking about when I switched from Pulse Audio to Pipewire, and when I did that video, I'd only been using Pipewire for maybe about a week or so, so I'd had enough time to have my general initial thoughts about it, but ever since that point, for the past couple of months, I've kind of had more and more problems cropping up over time, and I wanted to do a more, I guess, long-term look at running Pipewire on your system, because while it is still really good, it's still very, very much in development. I can't really speak from the perspective of someone who does professional audio work with software like Ardor. I can only speak from a general Linux user's perspective, as well as someone who needs to use software like OBS to record YouTube video. To start this on a positive note, I want to talk about some of the things that have actually improved. Now, one of the really annoying problems I had with Pulse Audio is if I left, say, like, there's actually two earphones here. If I left these earphones plugged in when I rebooted my system, it didn't happen every single time, and I never knew what was actually causing it, but sometimes I would have to go and unplug those and then replug them back in to get any audio whatsoever working. For whatever reason, it would try to play it through some other set of speakers that didn't actually allow audio to be played through them. I'm not 100% sure this was actually being caused by Pulse Audio, but the second that I swapped out from Pulse Audio to Pipewire, I never saw that problem actually happen again. So it only makes sense for me to assume that's what was actually causing it. Another nice thing is compatibility with new software. Now, if you've been using Linux for a very long time, you've dealt with this exact same thing back when there was the swap from Ulcer to Pulse Audio, where a lot of new software was coming out, or updates to software was coming out, which made them actually dependent on Pulse Audio, and it just straight up didn't work unless you had it installed. Now, that is slowly starting to happen again. It's not as big of a deal this time because Pipewire acts as like a bridge between Pipewire and Pulse Audio, but it is still slowly becoming a big deal. Things like pulse effects, for example, do require it, and there's a lot of things that are happening on the Wayland side that also have Pipewire as one of its dependencies. And as more distros like Fedora and Ubuntu start shipping Pipewire as their default, I expect this problem to get worse. It probably won't be as bad as the Pulse Audio time, but it will start being a problem, and you probably will just need to install Pipewire even if you don't want it. And this wasn't a thing when I did my original video, but not long after that, OBS actually got official support over on Wayland, and the way that works is by grabbing the video streams with Pipewire. So if I want to make any videos on the Wayland side, I was going to need to swap over to Pipewire anyway, even if it was just for the video streams. And because I'm swapping over to it for video streams, I might as well just swap over to it with audio as well. Now onto the bad things. So while Pipewire is really, really good while it's actually working well, when it's not working well, the problems that it has are really, really annoying. So occasionally I'll be recording some stuff in the morning, and then maybe at night I'm going to do a live stream. Now, sometimes I forget to go and turn my soundboard off and just leave that running all day. For some reason, it just stops being detected inside of Pipewire. I can go and restart the device, I can go and replug it in, and it just doesn't show back up. I don't know why. The device is still working perfectly fine. If I go and reboot my system and then turn the device on, it works perfectly fine. I don't know what's actually causing that. And also sometimes I'll turn the device on and it straight up just won't be detected whatsoever. So there's clearly something going on in the background with devices being detected that just didn't happen on the Pulse Audio side. And before someone says you can go and reboot Pipewire rather than rebooting your entire system, I know I just generally forget to do that. I've also started to notice the occasional bit of crackly audio. Now, when people normally report this, it's usually reported as a general issue. So they'll be watching YouTube videos and there'll be like a light crackle in the background, or they'll be listening to music and there'll be a light crackle. Mine is more of a localized problem. So occasionally if I start up, say, 2 videos in MPV, the audio will just completely die and it will be a garbled, crackly mess. If I go and then stop the clip and then start it again, it works perfectly fine. So there seems to be a problem with, for some reason, sometimes 2 audio streams at the same time, even though I sometimes listen to music while playing a game, and there's no problem actually happening there. The weird thing is it's not every single time. So if it was just like, okay, if you play 2 audio streams at the same time, Pipewire just dies. No one would ever use it, but at least you would know, okay, this is actually what the problem is. Because it's so random when it actually happens, I don't know how to actually report it as a problem. Also, because Pipewire is still very much still in development, I've noticed it's fairly inconsistent between updates. Right now, it's mostly stable. I say mostly because before I started recording this video, I noticed another new problem, but one of the really annoying problems I had is when I want to go and capture desktop audio inside of OBS. Now, I assume this is a Pipewire issue because between the updates of Pipewire, there wasn't an update to OBS. So, inside of OBS, is it going to capture the volume level that I actually hear, or the volume level just of that process? By that, I mean skipping the master volume level and just capturing the processor's audio, so even if I go and say mute the master volume, it's still going to capture that. Now, I don't really care which way it's actually going to work. I can make OBS function regardless. The problem is when it goes and switches, and so far, I've seen it switch back and forth about 3 times. In a similar vein, I've had a problem with the way that my headphone volume actually works. So all the time, I have my soundbar plugged in, and then when I want to go and use my earphones, I'll go and plug those in. So in the past, what would happen is when I went and plugged these earphones in, my master volume would change to a level set for the earphones, and then when I unplugged them, it would go back to the previous level. That no longer happens. Once again, I don't really care which way it actually does it. I just want it to be actually consistent. As for that new problem, for some reason right now, my microphone audio is looping back into my desktop audio when I'm trying to capture it inside of OBS. So if I go and unmute that, it'll sound something like this, which for obvious reasons is completely unusable. It's one thing for my default audio device to be swapped after doing a reboot. Sometimes I'll reboot and my soundboard will be my default output, but it's another thing when it changes in the middle of actually listening to something. Sometimes I'll be watching a video on YouTube and my audio cuts out entirely. And I look at my pulse mixer and for some reason, a completely different device is now my default. I also occasionally leave my soundbar on and have my earphones plugged in. So I'll be using my earphones, and if I go and say, start up a audio track in NCM PCPP, or I start watching a YouTube video that has some audio attached to it, for some reason, the second it starts, there'll be like a massive popping noise from my soundbar, no noise after that, and the audio's playing just fine in these earphones, so it seems like it's trying to decide which output it should be using, because they're on the same output device, but the front audio on my computer takes priority. I do know other people have reported this problem, and it's not just a me thing. I do hope that sometime in the future that does get addressed. Obviously, it could be fixed by just, turning my soundbar off when I'm not using it, but sometimes I forget to do so, and when it happens out of nowhere, like, say I forget that I actually have my earphones plugged in, think I'm actually using the soundbar, sometimes it can be a little bit shocking. And the last problem with Pipewire is more of just a Linux audio as an absolute train wreck sort of problem, where by using Pipewire and by going down that direction, we're effectively just adding in more layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of Linux audio. So Pipewire doesn't go and replace things like OSA, Pulse, Jack, GStream, and what it does is makes them easier to manage by having them all under the umbrella of Pipewire and basically bridging them together. So Pipewire has a Pulse audio server and it makes OSA work nicely with, and all these other parts all just play nicely in Pipewire, making it easier on the user side, but behind the scenes, making it a tangled mess of train wrecky garbage. So if we go and one day replace Pipewire, what's going to happen is that there's going to be something to fill in the spot of Pipewire, as well as Pulse Audio and OSA and Jack and all of these things. And if we go down that route, it's going to get even worse. Now, there are also some issues that other people have reported that I haven't really come across myself. Now, apart from the terrible audio crackling in those small occasions where it does happen, general audio quality is exactly the same as Pulse Audio. I have nothing to say about that. Maybe it's just the fact that my earphones are not that great. Maybe it's the fact that these headphones are like just, decent studio monitoring headphones, but I don't notice a problem with audio quality. Others have reported audio lag. Now, I can't say that I've ever actually noticed any. On the output side, it seems to be exactly where it should be, and on the input side, when I actually edit my videos, I have to go and sync up my video and my microphone, but that's because of my cam link, and that adds in about 4 or 5 milliseconds of delay, and when I swapped from Pulse Audio to Pipewire, that delay didn't grow or shrink any, so that seems perfectly fine. And all of my Pulse Audio tools working with things like PA-CTL to do CLI stuff, or working with Pulse Mixer to do a more graphical, it's still terminal, but a more graphical way of controlling my audio, they work exactly the way they should be. Do keep in mind that my system configuration might just be lucky. The sound chip on my motherboard might just be exactly what Pipewire wants to see. It might work perfectly fine with the rest of my system configuration, with the audio devices I have, with my soundboard, things like that. It might not work perfectly for you. I know there have been a lot of issues reported that I just have not seen. So your experience is very much going to vary. And I think that Pipewire still probably shouldn't be used on any production systems. And I think it is a really bad idea that systems like Ubuntu and Fedora actually are starting to ship it as their default. Fedora, it makes sense because Red Hat are the ones developing it, but I think it should still be given maybe another year or so to sort of iron out a lot of those problems. That'll be everything for me, and before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Donald, Logan, Michael, Andrew, Nathan, David, Carl, Mitchell, Will, Brennan, Chica Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Josh, Peter D, Stephen, Tease Through, 22 Shah, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to support work, them links down below to my Patreon, subscribe, side, leave, pay, all that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere. I've got a gaming channel, Brodie Robertson Plays, where I play games twice a week on live streams, and there's going to be some YouTube shorts as well. And this channel is over on Odyssey as well. That's everything for me, and I'm out.